Ready to go on an adventure? Yeah? We are going to go on an adventure. Good morning, loves. I thought I would take you guys along out with me today because me and Sky are going to go on a wee hike. We're in Rothenmerkus forest right now, which is just beautiful. It's one of my favourite forests to spend time in. It's like an old growth Caledonian forest, so it's got some beautiful Scottish Highland species and it's dominated by Scots pine, which is my favourite tree. So yeah, I thought it would be, it's not the best weather day, it's very overcast, but to be honest I don't do well in the heat, so this is my preferred kind of summer day to go out on a hike. So we're going to be out and about for about a couple of hours. Is a nice loop and we'll probably stop at a loch or river or both to have a wee cup of tea. So let's get going. These dog roses are some of my favourite kind of wildflowers. They're just so beautiful and they smell lovely as well, and I love the fact that in a few weeks, months time, these will turn into rose hips when we get into autumn. I just find nature so magical. Look, all the seed pods are starting to form in the broom. Come on! Good girl. First blaeberry I've seen this summer is essentially like a Scottish blueberry, and you often get a lot of it carpeting loads of old Scots pine forests. It's very important food source for lots of woodland creatures and also very yummy. Something really special about finding food from the forest floor. We're back from our walk now. Sky and I had a lovely morning just pottering around a Scottish forest. It's just the best way to start any day really, and I'm always blown away by the kind of nature I have access to here in the Scottish Highlands. But I really do think it's something I'm quite passionate about is the idea that you can find nature everywhere, and something that I've noticed this year, I've started keeping a nature diary. I've talked about that a couple of times on this channel and over on my Substack where I do my writing, and I found that that's really helped me notice more, like all the little things that I would have maybe brushed over or noticed but not really like paid particular attention to. I mean, I know a fair amount about nature. I have a background in biological sciences. I worked as a wildlife conservationist for most of my 20s, and a lot of that in this area, in the Scottish Highlands here in the Cairngorms. So, you know, I know a fair amount, but I would never say I know everything or even close. There's so much. Like the other day I was reading up about slugs, as you do, because of what I tend to do now is when I'm out about. I don't always write, but I often like capture some thoughts, some sensations that I'm feeling, some descriptions and any questions I have, and then come back and kind of like look things up. So I was looking up slugs and I found out loads of stuff that I had absolutely no idea. Like I had no idea that a lot of slugs are carnivorous and they eat earthworms and also other slugs. There was a weird fact that I remember, I can't remember the statistic now, about the amount of slugs that you have in your back garden. It was in the thousands, I think. So I was just like, oh my god, like this is the kind of stuff that all of us have access to. Slugs, I'm sure many of us have seen plenty in our life, and it just goes to show that when you dig in a little more and notice that nature is everywhere, and it is fascinating. Another way I like to escape into nature is through reading nature books, so I thought I would just do a quick roundup of some of my favourite ones that in particular are based in this area in Scotland. I did a full write-up over on my Substack on nature memoirs, like a deep dive into nature memoirs, so I'll link that down below in case you haven't read it. That's something that a genre I've really learnt to appreciate and read more over the last couple of years. I go into the background of what nature memoir is, why they become so popular, and I also do my like full list of all the nature memoirs I would recommend. In terms of the ones set in Scotland, the first one I don't actually have a copy of, but I would like to change that at some point in my life, is The Living Mountain by Nan Shepherd. So that is sort of one of the most iconic nature books written in Scotland, specifically in the Cairngorms. I can't remember exactly, I think it was back in like the 30s or 40s, I can't exactly remember now, but it was, it's essentially just a love letter to the Cairngorms, especially up in the hills. It's a really immersive read. It's not very long, but it's a wonderfully written book, and one that I want to revisit again. Another book that I don't have on me, but I did borrow from the library, is The Last Wilderness by Neil Ansell. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. This one was definitely more in, I find with nature books you get ones that are a little bit more standoffish, so it's just sort of describing nature, it's not much to do with the person in itself, and then you've got what I would class as a nature memoir, which is more to do with nature as almost a protagonist in itself and the relationship between the author and nature and how that overlaps. And I would say this is more in that, because it was talking about nature in the Scottish wilderness, that the author spent a lot of time there, but it was also touched on his losing his hearing. So it's his experience in that, and how, you know, his relationship with nature has changed now that you can't hear all the different bird songs, things like that. I read that a little while ago, but I remember really enjoying it. And then Jim Crumley, I think, was the first author I ever really read when it came to nature writing. He's a famous Scottish nature writer, and I particularly really enjoy his nature of seasons. So he's got like nature of, I've got these two, nature of autumn and the nature of winter. They're not all, if I remember rightly, I don't think they're all set in Scotland, but there's definitely some Scottish writing in here, and he's Scottish himself. I have read Nature of Spring. I've not read The Nature of Summer. I'm hoping to do that this summer. I think there's a copy in the library. But again, these are great overall descriptions, and I think these are particularly good at celebrating the different types of nature you find during the different seasons. And I love that. That's my favourite thing, is like even today, I did that walk maybe a month ago and it already looked so different. Everything had shifted so much, and I think Jim Crumley captures that beautifully in these books. And then a couple of other ones I read more recently. The first one being The Outrun by Amy Liptrot. So this is set in Orkney, actually. It's about Amy's experience. She's from Orkney originally, but she moves to London, and unfortunately she ends up becoming like an alcoholic and not very well mentally. So she goes back to Orkney to recover. So again, it kind of knits together her recovery with nature and how nature helps her recover, and obviously like Orkney is up there and somewhere I really love to visit. Some really stunning descriptions of that location. And finally, I read this one this year, not that long ago actually, is Sea Bean by Sally Hubbard. Quite a new release. Again, this is more of a nature memoir, because this is about Sally moving to Shetland, in this case, with her family, and she becomes a beachcomber. So she starts recording and noticing all the different things she sees on the beaches. So there's lots of really interesting facts about marine life in here, and also some really wonderful descriptions of Shetland, and again it shows how nature is healing because she has a long-term illness that's meant she's had to slow down, but it's shown that in doing that she's really noticed and appreciated nature more, and it's helped her slowly come back to herself and start to heal. So just a few books. I would like to get more in this genre. I love reading about nature and writing about nature, and if you'd like to read some of my writing, then I will link my Substack below, and that's where I've got a whole section dedicated to my Scottish nature diary. Thank you very much for keeping me company today, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.